Hi, and welcome. My name is Paninya Masrangsan, and I'm a senior flow advisor at TaxTop. I am based in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. So today we'll be talking about proving your transformation ROI with VSM. Let's get started. So a lot of organizations today have gone through major transformations. On average, they go through 5 major transformations in the last 3 years. That's a lot, right? However, the success rate is not as great. Only 34% report successful organizational transformation implementations. And maybe even more worrisome is that half of them reported clear failure. So what happened? Some of them said that it's because of unrealistic goals. Are you setting yourselves up for failure to begin with? Is it doable? And maybe even after you have started your progress of transformation, the progress is very hard to track. That is one of the very common pitfalls, that during the transformation progress, you don't know where you are, or even if you are moving in the right directions at all. So what ends up happening is having multiple conflicting local changes instead of one unifying change. A lot of companies don't have long-term plans of support from top down, and you end up having competing priorities, unplanned events, and constant need to fight fire. Maybe it's all of the production incidents that you have to deal with. And when you are comparing those to the long-term transformation, a lot of times teams are picking the production incidents to deal with first. So in this presentation, I'll show you that there is a better way. And that better way, an option of it, is value stream management. Value stream management is a relatively new practice as defined by Forrester as following. It's a combination of people, process, and technology that maps, optimizes, visualizes, and governs business value flow, including epics, stories, work items, through the heterogeneous enterprise software delivery pipelines. And saying it more simply, it is the series of tasks that an organization has to complete in order to deliver value to the customer. So as you can see down here, you see the gray bar that is labeled agile. That is something that a lot of organizations today are familiar with already, but it's only focusing on mostly the creation of the software. Then comes DevOps, extends past the agile phase, the creation, into release and operate. Now, value stream management, or the gray bar there, spans across both agile and DevOps, and even further. So it extends and covers everything end to end of the delivery pipeline, from ideate, create, release to operate. And not only that it is an end-to-end approach, it's also iterative. So you want to keep going on the cycle of assessing your current state, experimenting, analyzing your data, and then making adjustments. And then you'll want to go back and start by analyzing your new current state, and so on. So let's dive into each of these states. First, for assessing your current state, you want to determine where you are and where you want to be before you start your journey. So one of the things that my dad taught me as a kid was how to give directions. And this was before smartphones and even cell phones become prevalent. So the scenario was, if someone calls your landline at home, what would you say to them first? If they're asking for directions to come to your house. So at first I thought, well, maybe I will describe my house and say, the fence is blue and I have 2 trees in front of my house. But then my dad said, well, before all that, you have to ask them, well, where are you? So that you can give them the appropriate direction for them to get to your house. And it's the same thing with IT transformation. You have to know where you start. And how you know that with technology is using metrics and measurements. You can use revenue generated, budget, and actual spending from the financial point of view or planning point of view. You can use a more technical measurement like deployment frequency or application stability. How often are your applications available to end customers? Or you can use a more Scrum's lens, like story points per sprint, to see how much you are delivering, or from the quality point of view with number of defects. Now, when you're using these, they're not bad, but you have to keep in mind that if you're using something that are proxy metrics that are usually easier to measure but don't tell the whole story, they're usually pitfalls that come with it. They're not the whole picture. They don't tell you what you think they're telling you, and they can create wrong incentives. So for example, if you are thinking about call centers, sometimes they are incentivized to shorten their length of calls. So what happens is that these representatives are more incentivized to sometimes hang up on the customers if the calls are not going anywhere. That's not a good experience for the customers, right? And maybe for hospitals, one of the key measurements is the mortality rate. And you might think that that is a good thing to know that patients are survive the treatments after they stay at the hospital. However, that means that hospitals are more likely to turn away difficult cases, and you don't want that as a patient. And then in terms of technical environment, it's the lines of code. You can very easily see that if developers are copying and pasting lines of codes, that's not really adding any value to the business at all. Now, using proxy metrics means that leaders are leading while blindfolded. You have multiple specialized tools and silos without end-to-end view. You might have, Jira and Salesforce and ServiceNow and so many more, but then you don't have anything that gives you the entire view. So what you end up doing is relying on your gut feelings instead, or maybe even localizing your optimization that is not most beneficial to the customer. That is not great, right? You want to make sure that your ROI of investing is making the most impact. So here's a good quote to illustrate that even more. Measuring only one area of value stream is like only using 2 inches of a 12-inch ruler. So here is a suggested alternative, flow metrics. This is a flow framework version of an end-to-end customer-oriented view of a product value stream. These metrics are flow velocity, flow efficiency, flow time, flow load, and flow distribution. And let's go into each of them now. Flow velocity answers the question of, is value delivering accelerating? It measures the number of flow items delivered in a set duration. And as you can see from the right-hand side, that's a screenshot from our TaskTop Viz product. It is the number of items delivered over time from October of last year through January. And it's divided into different work types like feature, defect, debt, and risk, as you can see by the colors. So here you can see whether your delivery is consistent, if it's going up or down, or if there are a lot of peaks and valleys. Another metric that we have here is flow efficiency. And this is answering the question of, is waste decreasing in our processes? It's a ratio of active versus wait time and delivery from the work item point of view. A lot of times you can see that people are very busy in your organization. However, from the work item point of view, they are waiting for someone to pick it up for approval or so on. And this is a measure that is most closely related to what the customer is experiencing or care about. So we want to measure it from their point of view. Flow time is the time to market measurement. It's the duration of time that it takes to deliver a flow item. This is a good way to check between perception versus reality because it's end-to-end, which usually organizations don't have this data. And again, you want to see whether or not you're delivering consistently. flow load is work in progress. So it is a good leading indicator because this is where you usually see the first warning sign of something going wrong. If you have too much WIP building up, it often leads to trouble, like having cognitive overload and context switching, which in turn also impact the quality and decreasing team morale. And if you have a lot of things that are in the pipeline or in flight, and some things are getting fast tracked and some other things getting put on hold, it's hard to predict delivery time. And that means that you're missing your ETAs, or your promises with your customers are getting broken. So that means that customers are not happy, and it's a loss of customer trust. It's also difficult to strategically plan work long-term if you can't really know or predict what your time to value is. And lastly, you have flow distribution, which is the measurement of types of work that are getting done. And by the colors that you can see in the bar chart on the right-hand side, it is divided into feature, defect, debt, and risk. And it depends on the context, the product maturity, and strategy to see what your goal should be. So if your product value stream is newer, you should have a lot more feature that you are trying to deliver before your launch date. But if your product has been around for a while, you do want to work on more debt and more defect, for example. Now that you have some good idea about your current state, you want to start experimenting. You work with the team to produce some hypotheses on where the work is getting stuck and what changes can be made to go faster. So an important message here is that you can only go as fast as the slowest spot or the bottlenecks. And speeding up other steps will not result in improvement of overall delivery time. So for example, during the holiday season and Valentine's Day holidays, around here, a lot of candy shops are running out of this candy called hot chocolate bomb, and all of their websites are showing out of stock. So if you are a store owner, what would you do to speed up your delivery process and deliver your product to more customers? If you were to improve your website because you think that that is where out of stock is showing up, then that would not improve anything at all, because that's not where your bottleneck is. And it's the same thing with your delivery process in IT. If you're adding developers, it will not solve problems that are caused elsewhere, such as testing bottleneck, not enough ready for dev work, dependencies with external teams, or release approval cycles, frequent priority changes, for example. So there is no silver bullet that you can just add developers to solve everything. But even today, you probably already have good guesses on where your bottlenecks are. But can you confirm it with data? Here are some ways that you can confirm. So one way that we do with Viz is this functionality called Find Bottlenecks. It's a visualization of the states where artifacts are piling up and where they are spending the most time. So here, the x-axis is the duration, and the y-axis is the number of items sitting in that state. So you can see the top right-hand corner, there are two dots there, and they represent a lot of items sitting for a long time in those states. And if you look down in the table, you can see that there are user stories sitting in the backlog. So now that's a good starting point for you to dig down to see what is going on there. Perhaps it's prioritization. Perhaps it's something to do with the development team not picking up all these work, in the backlog. The second thing that you also want to pay attention to is neglected WIP. It's the measurement of how stale the work in the pipeline is. And again, to the right-hand side is a screenshot from Viz of how we show how stale the work is, by the gauge there. But you want to keep an eye on that, because having outdated requests, work getting put on hold after it started, shifting priority, are all signs of problems in the value stream. And measuring the amount of neglected WIP also is a direct measurement or sign of your ability to adapt to business ever-changing demands, because of course they do change, and you want to be as agile as possible to respond. Now that you have a target bottleneck selected, it's time to experiment. Let's start a continuous improvement activity here. And once that activity has been completed, you want to analyze the data. You can compare your data against the baseline with whatever metrics you use, flow metrics or otherwise, and see if they confirm your hypotheses. Does it confirm it? If so, that's great. Now you have a good data to confirm your gut feelings. If not, that's also great. You learn something new. That's a valuable data point as well. As stated here by Thomas Edison, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Hopefully you don't have to try that many times to figure out your bottleneck, but the spirit is there. Now you want to adjust and take action based on the results of your analysis. You want to always document and communicate your findings and lessons learned, regardless of what your results were. And then incorporate positive changes into standard procedure so that in the future, you can continue to reap the benefits of those good practices. And then most important of all, you want to always celebrate and share success stories so that you build a growth mindset and a culture that supports continuous improvement. Now you have gone through one round of the iterative cycle. It is a step towards a successful transformation, even though it's not the one time that you have to do this. You are taking one step towards your goal, then you have to do it again and again and again. And I promise you that you will find unexpected roadblocks, so you have to expect to change and adjust. You should, in all of your process of your journey, look at the big picture through value stream management lens. Look at the end-to-end perspective and from the customer point of view, and measure what matters. Be careful of proxy metrics. Keep using good metrics that are end-to-end and customer focused, like flow metrics, for example. And you should continue to learn, test, adapt, and grow. And with all that, you'll be ready to handle any business and technical terrain changes that may come your way. This is a nice quote to sum it all up. You keep putting one foot in front of the other, and then one day you look back and you have climbed a mountain. It might not look like much today or next week, but one day your transformation will be a great success. And lastly, here's what I want to leave you with. I hope you find today to be valuable. And if you want to find out more about value stream management and flow metrics, you can go to the Flow Institute, where you can find more on-demand courses, interactive workshops, and executive roundtables. And with that, I would like to thank you for joining me today and hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.